Don't you just wish acoustic pianos had a volume control? Well, let's have a go at adding one. There's nothing quite like playing an actual acoustic piano. I know digital pianos are getting better and better, but it's still not quite the real thing. Often I just press the soften pedal while I'm practicing, and this minimises the noise a little bit so the people around me and neighbours don't have to tolerate me making the same mistakes over and over. Even sometimes I don't really want to listen to the scales that I'm practicing. But there must be a way we can control this volume. So if I open up the piano, we're presented with a row of hammers and strings. And I've seen many people add felt between these two, and that's a way of reducing the volume. But what happens if we add 2 layers of felt? Okay, so that gets quieter again. Now, what happens if we added some material that wasn't quite as thick? So we built up something that's got a range of different thicknesses and we can position it height-wise. That gives us some type of control to control the volume. It's not going to be perfect, it's not going to be infinite, but it's enough to keep me happy and hopefully keep the neighbours happy. Now, felt does make a softer tone and I can see people liking it or disliking it, but if you want to make it quieter, I can't see too much alternative to this. Now, I do love the open sound of the piano with no felt, and losing that brightness is a bit sad, but it does mean I can practice pretty much whenever I want now. Now, this is an old piano, it doesn't have much value, which is really sad when you think about it, but it does mean we can kind of add a couple of holes and not really care. If you've got a piano that has some significant value, you might want to think of adding some sticky pads or an alternative way of attaching this type of system so that it could be reversible. Yeah, my piano's got some dampers at the end that don't really work. I've just put some felt in there. I don't play those. It's not really a problem for now. That's a future problem. Also, if you are heavily invested in your piano, make sure you do use piano felt. You don't want something that's going to react with your strings and shorten the life or change the sound of those. Okay, so this is in FreeCAD. We've created a little bracket with hinges for each side. And in an else section, we've got another section of aluminium, and between that, shown in red, is some felt. Now we can kind of change the angle of this, and that changes the height, and that should be able to move around in the cavity in the piano without causing too much trouble. If you do want to make this, the sizes don't really matter. You just want to make something that's going to hold the felt. You can glue, bolt, screw, rivet this together. Just use what you've got at hand. I think the whole point of a lot of the projects I do is I try and use what I've already bought or have just lying around that's easily available. I'm sure if you look around, you'd be surprised at how much raw material is just waiting there to be used in a project. So I'm just going to check the length, measure twice, make sure we only buy once, and a quick saw through this, and then we can add some holes along the length. Add as many or as little as you dare. And now I've got the 3D printed end parts, and we'll just use some M3 bolts to bolt it all together. So the next part is a little fiddly. So I've laid out the felt, and I've laid out the layers of felt. I guess any mistakes or misalignment here we can correct with scissors, as long as it's not too bad. I'm just going to use some rivets. I haven't really used these too much, but I really quite like them. Now, for anyone who doesn't know how they work, it's basically an aluminium collar that we pull a pin through with a ball on the end, and that creates like a mushrooming effect and deforms the aluminium, pressing the parts together, and it kind of permanently deforms it, and it's that deformation that holds the parts together. The pin will snap and that leaves the rivet in place. These are really fast, cheap, and I think it's one of the lightest things we could put to hold this together, maybe apart from glue. But I think this is starting to look like it might actually work. So attach this to the piano, we're just going to play around with what location seems right. I'm going to play this quite a bit and just make sure that the felt's not going to hinder the action at all, but it still actually dampens the sound and creates a quieter noise. And also we can get the full range of the felt. Okay, seems about right. So the next obvious question is, how do we control the position of this? And I'm just going to go for the simplest answer and the simplest solution: use its own weight to move it down. So to move it up, I'm just going to put a bit of string from the top of it over the top of the piano, and I can feed in or out the string, and that changes the position of this as I play. Now, I know the thumbnail's a little misleading as it shows a control knob. If I really wanted, we could have done that. I think it wouldn't have been too much difficult to have some type of wheel that the string winds onto, but I think that would be a little ugly, I guess. It works well for a thumbnail, but not so good on an actual piano. But yeah, I think this seems to work pretty well. I really enjoy having the range of volume. I think having too much quiet in and having too much volume reduction does kill a piano, and having it too light doesn't give you the full range, just say if you want to practice late at night. But yeah, let me know what you think of this. Please do share and subscribe. It does help the channel grow. And I'll see you soon with lots of electric piano stuff coming very soon. Until then,